right? Or they would prefer to cooperate if they only care about profits and don't care about being found liable and being put in jail for some period of time. If they dismiss those consequences, then collectively they would be able to generate 1.2 billion here, and here they would only generate 800 million. Okay? All right, so the message is much the same. A couple of other examples. Ad wars. Two firms end up spending millions of dollars for TV ads to try to get market share away from other firms. Right? What typically happens is that each firm cancels out the effects of the others, and both of their profits fall by the cost of the advertiser. During Monday Night Football, for many years, two tire companies, which were dominant players in selling tires here in the United States, were jointly advertising during halftime. And as a result, when I was at Harvard, one of my colleagues did a study analyzing whether or not either one of them picked up any market share in the real world, not hypothetically or theoretically, and it turned out neither of them picked up market share. There was no real benefit, but there was a cost, namely the advertising expenditures that took place. Yes? Because it turns out, just like us as individuals, firms make mistakes too, right? So, they had some new advertising program they thought was going to be very effective, and they were expecting that to make a difference in terms of market share. Why, for example, and we're going to look at this example, bring it closer to home, why when we're in presidential election are all these negative ads out there? If you look at Gingrich versus Romney, right? Can you imagine more negative ads about two people? Now, when you look at those ads, if you believed everything that was being said, you'd say they have no character whatsoever, right? Okay, but that's the same sort of outcome. There was another, yes? That's a very good question. No, and it begs the question, why not? No, all of the basic regulations go to pricing and what happens with regard to the effect on consumers. If two firms happen to collude on agreeing with regard to their advertising and promotion, why wouldn't they go the next step and also try to control prices as well? So it's part and parcel, but I don't think there's ever been, I'm not aware of any legal action that's ever been brought against two or more firms for jointly colluding on the amount of advertising that they're doing. Yes? Sure.
So basically if neither of them cut their fares, that can't be legal only if they make some sort of agreement on it, but if both of them decide to trust each other, that's not legal?
If they both decide to trust each other, and Gabe brought this up during the break, and I'll talk about this down the road, if it's a repeated game and there's strategic interactions, and I signal you that, by the way, I'm going to raise prices a little bit. You follow me. Okay. You go a little bit further. I go a little bit further. There's no agreement here. We're just signaling one another. Right? That is not, per se, illegal. Okay? Was there another question over here? Yes. Yes, no question about it. And the Sherman Antitrust Act has a section on just price fixing that goes to cartels and collusion. Monica? Hey, Monica. Oh, I got the wrong name. Pardon? I thought I'd had them all memorized, but I've just failed my own test. Omega. Did you have your hand up? Monica's not close enough, is it? Okay, all right. Okay, other examples. Ad wars is an example. OPEC, we hear lots of arguments about what's OPEC going to do with regard to restricting output. It's not purely a cartel, but they control a significant portion of crude oil supplies in the world, right? But even though they reach an agreement, there's also all sorts of incentives for defection. There's defection all the time. Nigeria defecting from whatever agreement. And the market tries to anticipate which country is going to defect first to undermine whatever price agreement they've reached. And because they're outside of the United States, they can reach an agreement, coming back to your question about whether a contract would be legal or illegal, since they're outside the United States, and the Middle East doesn't have any anti-monopolization or anti-competitive regulation in place, they can get away with that. But there are lots of major producing countries that are outside of the cartel, Russia, Canada. And as a result, frequently whatever they've agreed to is undermined by internal defection or suppliers outside of the umbrella of OPEC expanding their supply. Okay. All right, other examples. The arms race between military superpowers. Each country is clearly better off if they disarm. But the dominant strategy is to arm. Right? And that's the fundamental, simple explanation of the Cold War that existed following World War II up until the collapse of the Soviet Union in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Common property resources. We'd all be better off if we conserved those resources. But each person who uses those resources, their dominant strategy is to exploit those resources. And we'll look at examples when we turn to environmental economics following the midterm. Okay. Now, the non-cooperative oligopolistic equilibrium, the fact that there's a Nash equilibrium and it's not the cooperative solution, it may be bad for the firms themselves in terms of reaping more profits, but it's helpful for society because now quantities are closer to the socially efficient output and price is closer to marginal cost. Right? Now, there are prisoner's dilemma where that is not the outcome, namely the inability to cooperate may reduce social welfare. And that, in terms of the examples on the prior slide, namely with regard to common resources, the fact that there's a prisoner's dilemma problem there actually detracts from social welfare or from economic efficiency. Okay? Arms race, two examples, arms race and overuse of common resources. All right? Now, let's look, as I mentioned a moment, something that's very contemporary, looking at negative campaign ads and going through the same kind of analysis, game theory analysis, because there is strategic interactions, right? If we look at the four Republican presidential candidates that are left standing, the four, and you look at the interactions, that is a game theoretic problem, right? And you ask yourself, why in the world are they engaged in such negative ads? And wait until Obama is running against one of those, which is most likely to be Romney. You will see all sorts of negative ads. Were you paying attention in the last governor's race here in the state of California? Whitman versus Brown? Lots of very colorful, eye-catching ads, negative ads, right? Okay, there's two candidates. Let's label them R and D. Here's the facts. If R runs a negative ad attacking D, 3,000 fewer people will vote for D. 1,000 of those 3,000 will vote for R. The other 2,000 will be so disgusted by the negative ads that they won't vote. They're just disgusted, right? They'll abstain from voting. In contrast, if D runs a negative ad attacking R loses 3,000 votes, D gains 1,000, and 2,000 abstain. Okay? And suppose they get together and say, listen, we're both members of the same party. Let's make it Gingrich and Romney. This is ridiculous. Let's agree to cooperate. No negative ads, right? And some people would say, well, the PACs are doing it. The political action committees, they have no control over them. If you believe that, I'll sell you Manhattan for a few dollars if you believe that. In any event, they agree to refrain from running attack ads. Okay, what is the payoff matrix? Okay, R's decision. Do not run an attack ad. Cooperate. Run an attack ad. Okay, now we ask ourselves, for R, is there a dominant strategy here? Is there? Volunteers? Yes. You want to change the fact pattern that I've given you. By the way, don't do that on an exam. Don't change the fact. It's not going to help you. Please stick with the fact pattern. You may be quite right, and that's a reasonable presumption, but that's not the facts that I've given you. I've given you the facts that these are the outcomes with regard to R. It can run the attack ads, and the outcome is it gains 1,000 votes, or it loses 2,000 votes. If it doesn't do it, it loses 3,000, and no votes are gained or lost. There is a dominant strategy here, right? Clearly. And the same story with regard to D. So the message from this straightforward analysis is that each candidate has a dominant strategy, and it is to run attack ads. And they all hope that they have a better ad, right? But at the end of the day, they're negative, no matter how you spin it. And you're going to turn people off. Although, it can be interesting, right? Because they bring up all sorts of things that, even though you think you know them well, it never occurred to you that they have done such things. Anyway. Okay. The Nash equilibrium, then, is both candidates run attack ads. The effects on the election, I've configured the facts to give you this outcome, that there's no effect. And each side cancels out the effects of the other. The effects on society, however, is negative because what happens as a result of such negative ads is that there is typically lower voter turnout, and there's been empirical studies about the causal connection between such ads and the percentage of the voting population turning out for a particular election. It increases apathy, less scrutiny of elected officials. You come away thinking, I don't know what to believe. What's the truth here? Yes?
Do you also don't assume that they have like an equal share of the votes right now? Because it's very likely there's a lower voter turnout than when originally had more supporters.
Right.
For them.
No, you can yes, you're quite right. You can complicate the fact pattern here, but it won't change the insight. And what I want to do is illustrate the concepts and the insights. If I gave you all that complexity, it's very likely that we wouldn't be able to see the forest for all the trees. All right? Okay. Why do people sometimes cooperate? Now, this comes back to repeated games. And by the way, let me give you a quick aside. There was a very famous professor at Harvard who in the Harvard Business School taught second-year MBAs, and he taught a course on game theory. And he had a rich set of examples, very well-crafted examples. And at the Harvard Business School, everything is a case study. So they try to take the cases and make them appear part of the real world when they're not, right? To illustrate the concepts. So all of his games were one-shot games. And all of the students in the class learned how to take advantage of opposing players in these one-shot games, defecting, violating some agreement, whatever. And a Wall Street journalist came to Harvard and was interviewing the students and said, gee whiz, tell me about your experience here completing your MBAs. What was the experience like? And a number of them said, it was great. I learned game theory, and I learned how to take advantage of other firms. I learned how to cheat and win. And it was printed up in the Wall Street Journal. And Howard Rafer, the teacher of the course, is one of the most remarkable character, totally ethical, first-rate, one of the great game theorists that any profession has ever known. He never taught that course again because he was so upset about the evaluation that took place, which was anecdotal in large part. And a number of those students who realized the outcome 10 years later came back collectively at some anniversary of their class and had worked for a few years printing up a whole bunch of repeated game theory games and presented it to him and apologized. Any event, that is repeated games, and you're going to get a much different outcome when you have repeated games versus one-shot games. Now the strategies can lead to cooperation. And the evidence that's out there, both theoretically and empirically, the simplest strategy under those circumstances is tit for tat. So in the game, in one round, if your rival does one thing, you repeat that same thing. If that rival tries to take advantage of you, defects, whatever, and you cooperate, and as a result lose in that round, the next time you do exactly what your rival did in the prior round. And once the two players realize, or three players or eight players all realize that that's going to happen over and over again, they gravitate toward a cooperative solution. Right? And that is the outcome for repeated games. Public policy toward oligopolies. As we noted in the first lecture, governments can sometimes improve market outcomes, and the actual legislation that provides the foundation for governmental intervention to control oligopolies with regard to abusing markets and hopefully promote competition. There are three different versions that I'm going to briefly describe, and then we'll complete today's lecture. They're all based on either the Sherman Antitrust Act, which forbids collusion between competitors, or the Clayton Antitrust Act that allows buyers of the products to form class actions and bring legal suits against firms that end up abusing whatever pricing power they may have. Okay. Now, there's a lot of controversy about these antitrust policies with regard to at least economists' views, but no one can deny that price fixing is legal, first of all, and no one can deny that it ill serves the public interest. So there's all sorts of examples where cartels have been broken up and price fixing have been found liable and had to pay huge damages for their attempt to coordinate their pricing. Another example, very quickly, retail price maintenance, fair trade. Up until a year ago, when the Supreme Court struck this down, there was a law in this country that said that manufacturers could not force retailers to maintain prices to consumers. But then the free riding problem became very clear, where people go into a full-service store, gain the knowledge about, say, the best sound equipment or whatever, go into sound rooms, review it all, and then go to a discount house or go on the internet and get it for a much lower price. They're saying, good. So as a result, what companies have done, you will only get a warranty from me if you buy it at one retail outlet that actually provides you with full service, but in addition maintains the prices that I have suggested for the retail level. Second example is predatory pricing, where the argument here is that a company, if there are just a few firms in the industry, I want to drive you out of business. So if I've got the wherewithal, I set my price below my marginal cost and below your marginal cost. And you get so fed up because you're losing money period in, period out, and you end up exiting from the industry. Now, if there's only two of us, I'm a monopolist now, and now I can raise prices, right? But that begs the question, can I control entry? Are there barriers to entry? Because once I get rid of you and I start raising prices, can I capture monopoly profits? I can't if there's free entry, right? So even though it's a nice theory, it doesn't make a lot of economic rational sense. And then finally, tying. And this is an example where a company bundles two products. One is a very favorable product and the other is a dud. The best example is studios. Many years ago, studios would sell a portfolio of films to local movie houses. You get the best ones, but you got to buy the junk too, right? That's tying, and that is illegal. So as a result, that is another policy that's out there that results in some market power and some diminution of economic welfare. Okay? So in conclusion, oligopolies can end up looking like monopolies, but they lie in terms of outcomes somewhere between competitive market structures and monopolies. The prisoner's dilemma shows how difficult it is to maintain cooperation. And finally, policymakers or the government uses antitrust laws to regulate oligopolistic behavior. Thank you.